Thank you, first of all, for doing this again. Probably didn't
Yeah,
hurt that last time I just gushed about Spontaneous for like 20 minutes. So,
I'll take it.
it was spontaneous, and that first script that you're like, I never want to make that movie anymore, so don't worry, it's not happening. Um, but it's I got so excited when I saw that you had made this movie because I was down for the next one. It was funny, I'd seen Love and Monsters after Spontaneous and been like, it's half your movie. It counts, but like
Counts.
this is yeah. You're like I,
Kind of. Residual. I catch the residuals. Yeah.
exactly. That's one of the like it's there's that run. I'm always fascinated when I see that run of like things that a filmmaker who clearly wants to be directing isn't directing. You're like, oh, okay. So rent got paid, which is good, and then if people like it, that certainly doesn't hurt the career. But I feel like this is so much more what sort of you've been building towards, and to take along one of my favorite actresses, I was not upset. uh
Oh, good.
yeah, no,
One of my favorite actresses. Yeah.
Caitlin is amazing, and the funny joke I have is I only see her at like award shows, so we don't look like we normally do. She must think I'm very put together because she
Nice. Yeah, it was funny. We just did an event on Saturday, and it was the first time she promoted the movie because of the strike.
yeah.
And it was like, she all dressed up and everything, and it was like, oh yeah, this is not who we are.
No, it was very funny to a Critic's Choice for a while. I would see her, and then when the
Yeah.
pandemic happened, I think I jokingly like tweeted her because we'll talk once in a blue moon and be like, I think you're the last person who touched me, and she was just like, that's so sad, but also like I feel terrible about that. Um, but no, it was like there's something about her that she should be in every movie, first of all,
Oh yeah,
but
absolutely.
to utilize her here, I think is such a great realization of the expressions on her face are just like A plus.
Yeah.
And yeah, like when you're writing this movie, how do you sort of start to think about that? Because you're making a decision to cast in a very specific way, right? If you go with your verbose actors, you're there's something to be said for taking that away from them. But I think you want to focus in on who can do eye acting, who can make you feel with expressions, who can make you feel with body movements.
Yeah. No, it's so, I mean, what was so great about Caitlin, beyond all the obvious things, is she has such range. And I think, and I've told her this too, so I'll just keep embarrassing her, I guess. But like, I think the work she does in like Unbelievable is so incredible and devastating and really complicated stuff. Where this terrible thing has happened to her. Everyone's telling her it didn't happen to her, and then she's confused. Did it happen to her? Like that's a lot of really tricky stuff to play.
Yeah.
And she is talking during it, but a lot you can visually follow it the entire time, just on her face. And then you juxtapose that with like the book smarts, or the lighter stuff she's done, and there's really not and I cast her before Dope Sick had come out, so that wasn't in my mind, but she's incredible in Dope Sick. Um, but you're kind of like, well, okay, she can do all of this work, and it feels like, of course, she's like one of the best dramatic actresses of her generation. And then she can do all this comedic work, and you're like, oh, she's one of the best comedic actresses of her generation. And so, like, when we talked about her doing this, I was like, this is like the ultimate cheat code because there's not a part of me that was like nervous because I was like, you're
Yeah.
going to just, you know, I should amp myself up more about my wonderful directing actors. But really, like you cast her and you're just kind of like, it's really ridiculous how talented she is and how much she can convey story with her face. And then it's been really funny in post with Caitlin because in post sometimes you'll use takes from a different moment over here, and things will move around, and without a every time that we would move a take around, she would call us on it, and she'd
Uh,
be like, hey, that's not the performance I'm giving in that shot. And I'd be like, no one would know. But she has such a mastery of what her face can do that she can then recognize immediately where she's like, oh, I can see that mentally Bryn is thinking this, but you're using it in this shot instead of where it was meant to be. And I was like, I don't know if there's another actor that would understand their performance capabilities as finely tuned as hers. Like it's really striking. And then she just makes it so seem so easy. Like it's not like there's like a Bible that she's kind of mapped out
No.
the furrows of her brow. It's really just I am constantly in awe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And very lucky that she said yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one of those things I also, have liked her and stuff for years, but you always go back and you realize, oh, you're in 12 other things I didn't realize in like the back.
Yeah.
And I think even, that's for her, I think great training because, you know, she might not have even realized the face acting yet. But there's so many films where she doesn't have a ton of lines, but she's just there because she looks young. So like she was inevitably cast as like somebody's kid for a while or in
Mhm.
a class, and you're like, okay, so she is in the background, but you're paying attention to her in a way that I don't even think the movie wanted you to at times, which is just
Yeah.
a great sign for this. And I think also here, like you said, like not like making it look easy is kind of like a double-edged sword, but the idea is it doesn't look like she's killing herself to do it. And you always kind of want to believe that you're watching people have a good time, right? Even in heavy movies, it
Yeah.
could be fun. Like obviously,
Yeah.
you know, I'm sure for you, you're like, yeah, on set, it's really fun, but also it's the worst time of my life because there's pressure and like, oh, somebody thought it was a good idea to give me millions of dollars. Uh-oh. But like,
Mhm.
it should still be fun. Like you're still making pretend, right? There's
Yeah.
money, there's
It's
pressure.
still aliens chasing a girl. Yeah.
Exactly. You're still like my ass, and like I spent the last 6 hours trying to figure out how to make this work. And when we watch it, it's silly aliens chasing a girl. Like I can't believe I'm allowed to do this. Like
Yeah.
everyone
Oh
has the
yeah.
sense of that in this, which I think is so key.
Yeah. And we talked about that a lot where it's a really heavy character and it's a really heavy in some regards movie, but we always Kayla and I and the crew talked about wanting to make sure it always felt like a movie,
Yeah.
like that it felt like um you're having like a really good time and that Bryn was never morose or depressing to be around.
Yeah.
Partially that because the events kind of take place a while after the really heavy stuff, emotionally for Bryn, but also just that you're like, oh, like we have Caitlin
Yeah.
and she's the most lovable person. And then that's becomes part of the little bit of the mystery of the movie is how is someone so lovable and adorably put together like Bryn, such an outcast, and then playing it so that Bryn's not like at home crying.
Yeah.
Like it's more like she's trying to have a good, bizarre life. And that feeding into the moviness of it all. Like we're talking about heavy stuff, but like not really wanting anyone to leave the movie depressed.
No, it's got
Now
an
they can be
interesting vibe.
confused, but not really. Yeah, just wanting it to feel like it's like a PG-13 Halloween kind of
Yeah.
wrong. But we wanted there to be more meat on the bone than I think people expect.
Yeah.
Um, but we wanted to also make sure that she's biting aliens and they're chased. We wanted all the fun shit too.
It's I said it's Amblin in that way. It's like you can make something that everyone can watch while never feeling like it's targeted at anyone. And I think that's also I think a skill you've got, with spontaneous too. Like I've shown women in their 40s, I've shown guys in their 20s it, and like everyone likes it because it feels like it's speaking to them while you're not like
Oh,
talking
cool.
to them. Because I think that's the thing. Like, when you write a movie, you're in whatever place you're in your life, right? And if
Yeah.
that's you're kind of writing for you, right? If you're writing for you, if you're unless you're
Yeah, I
taking
don't care about other people.
exactly. Well, I mean, I think even when we talked about it last time, like the first script you sold, right? That was for you, right? That was where you were in your life. And would you make
Yeah.
that movie now? No, because that's not who you
Yeah.
are. But when you can make a movie that can target a lot of different people. You have this weird freedom to go in any direction you want because you're not beholden to like, oh,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm betraying myself. You have not, to my knowledge, experienced aliens. So you can kind of
Sadly, I've not, which is a
yeah,
bummer. I met a couple of people at the screening this weekend, told me they have had encounters, and I was just jealous.
yeah.
Like I
You have
live
that
in
half, like
constant hope.
yeah, you're like Homer backing into the bushes, but also like tell me more while I take a couple steps back. Just in
No,
case.
like it's like I would be so excited about it. And it was funny, like when the movie was coming out, it was like, it would have been great marketing.
Yeah.
But there was like peak "Are Aliens Real"
Yeah.
hype. Um, and that was really fun. And it was like always like for a while there was like, is today the day? Like
Yeah.
we get told. And I was, I that's definitely like a bucket list. Is like I want to know there are aliens before I croak.
Yeah.
Um,
You want to get elected president and be like, just tell me. I want to know. Just come on.
I know I was just talking to my wife, and it's like I was like, it's such a bummer that Trump never said anything about aliens.
Yeah,
Because you're
that's
like,
would have
assume
done
the
it.
president would be told if they were aliens, and then he would definitely tell everyone if they were aliens. Like he wouldn't be like, this is a national secret, I'm going to keep to myself. And like that, I do feel like that is a bummer of the Trump era. Is at the very least, if he was just like, and there's aliens,
Yeah. It just
I
exactly.
could
He would have been
forgive
the guy to be
Trump.
like, by the way, aliens killed Kennedy. 2 for 1. Don't you love it? Like he would have
It
just
would have, it's like he's not keeping that secret.
biggest tease was still it's funny. I don't know if you remember this. Clinton, when he got elected, was on one of the late
Yeah, they asked
shows,
him.
talked about
Yeah,
he's like, I wanted to find out. I directed them to tell me. What'd you find out? I was like, that's not helpful.
I
Don't set
know it's such a
up.
bummer. So, but yeah, I live in hope. But I think, yeah, I think to what you're saying is like I'm it's like there's that great Rick Rubin thing about, not caring about the audience and making stuff for yourself. And I think I take that to heart, but I also think I make the movies I want to see in the summertime,
Yeah.
that aren't just like the giant Furiosas. But like I think my tastes, I can go pretty art house too, but like I feel like there's a lot of really great art house movies.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm not missing out on what is the art house movie that I haven't seen, as opposed to some of these other things like Spontaneous. There was such a lack of challenging like high school studio type
Yeah.
movies where it's like this is a really fun juxtaposition of hard material, but in a genre that I love that has kind of been forgotten. And I think same with Nowsy, where it was partially like just desperately wanting to work with gray aliens. Um, but then also it being a genre that I feel like it's always like there's always alien movies every year. Um, but I think there's a story that I always wanted with those alien movies, which was, whether it's Signs or Close Encounters or what have you, it's like there's a lot of like hiding in the bushes aliens, as opposed to like they traveled a long ass way to get here. Like they're not hiding. They're walking in the front door. And then what do you do? And so again, I think that's a lot of it's just scratching movie going itches that I have. And then hoping people want to see the same movie as I want to make.
I can't imagine anyone not being satisfied by that because you do give a little bit of the like, well, what's there? And then there is that like, no, 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 no. You will see what's here. By the way, we're
Yeah.
like 15 minutes in. So get
Oh,
used
I did like so. Yeah, that was a big thing because it was always a streaming movie, and it's so funny because there's such a difference between testing a theatrical movie and testing a streaming movie, but they haven't really cracked that
yeah.
difference yet. Because in a movie theater, you're probably not walking out within 5 minutes, and at home you are turning the channel within 90 seconds. And so that was a big part of it where it's like, what is the fastest we can get to an alien? Because people, I think, are already programmed to be like, well, aliens show up at the end.
Yeah.
But like, what's the fastest we can get to an alien so that the audience is like, oh, okay. Like, and so that was a lot of work where it's like, how interesting can we make Caitlin?
Yeah.
And thankfully, it's Caitlin, so very interesting. And then what is the fastest we can go? Okay, something's in our house.
Yeah.
We're in a movie, and we're going to show you so much more than you thought. And please don't change the channel.
And to make it not feel calculated, right? Because I think you can tell. Like I follow you on Twitter. You watch everything like I do. So like you can tell when you're
Yeah.
watching like, okay, this scene was formulated in a lab. But like to what you
Okay,
said,
we're definitely not a lab movie.
no, no, this is definitely a like left him alone, and they were almost like surprised when they go, "Oh shit, Brian made a good movie. All right, let's figure out what we got to do with it now." Because that's the thing. Like, there's so many things, right? Even whenever we hear like, "Oh, movies are terrible now," you're like you're not watching enough. There's always been terrible movies. There's always been
Yeah.
great movies. Like, but the people who say they were terrible movies are not watching. They're not watching Sean Baker movies. They're not watching like these weird indie movies that are like, bet you haven't seen this before. Whether you like it or not, you haven't seen it before.
Yeah.
And, they're not necessarily going to festivals. So it's that weird, like, how can I make something that's mainstream and anyone can sit down and be entertained by, but also feel like you're watching something like meant for you? Because that's what we all fell in love with movies because it felt like you stumbled upon something like made just for you.
Yeah, and that's something we definitely lost in the last like decade
Yeah.
is the like whoops-a-daisy kind of um if you mean like even like the new Apple update, it's so frustrating because it used to be so much easier to see like these like the independent releases,
Yeah.
and then I would just rent, and I'm pretty online, but I would not recognize a bunch of movies every week, and I just rent a bunch of them because I'm like, that sounds cool. And sometimes they weren't, and like sometimes there would like be a movie where I'm like, this is so awesome, and I haven't heard anyone talk about it. Um,
And then
and
you
it
see who
gives you
directed them
that thrill
sometimes.
of like,
Like,
which one?
I was like, sometimes you see who directed them. You're like, wait a minute. I was waiting for
Oh
this
yeah.
movie.
Oh yeah. And then but it gives you that thrill of like when you were younger and you were like flipping around and then you catch like a movie that just started 10 minutes ago on TNT and
Yep.
you're like, oh, this is so cool. And then you feel like ownership of the movie because it becomes like the thing that you are sharing with people.
Yeah.
And that's a part of it that's kind of gone away in like the mass
Yeah.
streaming
We
era.
don't
But
have we
what are
don't
you
have
gonna do?
TV. We don't have TV like that. All the 80s movies I loved, I watched in the 90s on Channel 11 at like Saturday afternoon. Like, there's no reason that like I should love Iron Eagle, but I found it one day and went, this
Yeah,
is the best movie ever made. And then you watch another movie like, this is the best, Real Genius. This is the best movie ever made. Like, you're at that age, everything is amazing,
yeah,
and you don't really get that anymore. You kind of got it a little after with like IFC, right? When that was first out, and like, oh, you can watch an unedited like indie movie, and you'd be like, I guess I'm spending the next 3 hours of my life watching Magnolia, and it's 6 a.m. and you go, that was amazing.
yeah.
Now you would never have started it. You would have pulled it up and gone, all right, that looks good. Oh, good Rotten Tomatoes. Three, yeah, I'll watch it another time. And then you
Yeah, it's funny
just
like
go to
seeing
bed.
like the movies that kind of get like resurgences on Netflix too, where it's like you like The Judge like blew up recently and I think Tarzan blew up recently. And you're like, these are big movie star movies that did kind of get forgotten a little bit, but yeah, it doesn't feel quite the same as it used to. But yeah, like I remember when like my friends were doing like the 80s all over podcast.
Yeah.
Um and then like the thing about it, like you were like everyone knows like the all-time classics
Oh,
and the all-time bombs. But then there's like so many movies in there that would be in like that like 2 to 4 out of 5 range, or even like 5 out of 5 range, but like didn't get like the Oscar nominations to kind of carry it over. That did this all get like forgotten. And I found like so many like amazing movies through that because it was a curated experience of
yeah.
like two nerds being like, I saw this movie that came out in March of '81 and it blew my mind.
This
And I was
is
like, I've never heard of it.
this is something I do every Friday now. My friend Mike Ryan, he's also a writer.
Yeah,
He does Friday night movie nights, and it's usually 80s movies, and it's like somebody hasn't seen Smokey and the Bandit, or somebody hasn't seen Cannonball
I haven't
Run.
seen Smoking the Band. I need to see
Oh,
it.
it's so
Yeah,
I didn't realize like, oh, there's a reason Burt Reynolds was like the king of the world for a while.
yeah,
Like, you just watch that and you're like, oh, I get why everybody fell in love with this. Or like we watched Dabney Coleman die. We watched Cloak and Dagger. It's just like,
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
when would we have watched Cloak and Dagger aside from that? But you watch it and you're like, I would have watched this movie 17 times if I knew about it.
yeah, yeah. My big ones are. I'm a big Guy Madden guy, which I know is
Yeah.
very art house, but I love pushing those. And then the opposite is I'm a really big fan of director Bob Balaban,
Oh,
who made so many like weird, not so many, but a couple like
yeah.
really weird studio horror comedies, like My Boyfriend's Back.
Yep.
I think those are the things I like push on people where I'm like, no one made stuff like this before. No one made stuff like this since. And that's so exciting. And like I don't think they're necessarily like 5-star movies, but they are like so cool and inspiring and unique. And like yeah, I feel like those are the ones where I'm like, oh, it's just like studio filmmaking can be like really cool.
100%. And
Yeah, if you have a good studio, like, and I've like with 20th, I was really lucky to have like such a cool studio where like uh they love movies and they were just like, let's take swings. And it's
yeah,
like, great.
like don't have to ask me
Won't
twice.
last forever. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, you saw my last movie, right? Like swings will be taken. Just confirming, right?
Yeah. And it's funny, like in my head, they don't feel like swings until
Yeah.
people start seeing them, and then I'm like, oh shoot.
Yeah, I remember the weird looks I got when I was because I spent all year telling people about Spontaneous and going, it's as if like Cronenberg directed The Fault in Our Stars. And just like the
Right.
weird
That was
like,
the pitch. Yeah, that was
oh, I'm
really
glad I got it right. But no, this like you see like the eyes turn into like those weird circles in like cartoons. They're like, oh, I you don't know what to think, do you? Like, no, I mean it in a good way. And
yeah.
people watch it and go, yeah, no, you were right. Like that's it's funny that I think it's people you pitch people on like My Boyfriend's Back as like you might love it, you might not, but like you haven't seen something like this, and then you're
Yeah.
also making movies that people pitch to other people in that way. So it's almost this like you were always meant to do that.
That's cool. Like, yeah, I hope so.
I listen, I say it. As we wrap up, like when you think about what you're gonna make next, right? And I'm sure there's stuff you're working on, but like there's always like if I could, right? Is the thing you're working on, there's the thing of like one day I'm gonna work on this. Does that ever change as you continue to do it, or is it still like I that's the thing that I'll do one day?
Not really. It's funny. I was just talking to Caitlin about it too, where I think in my head I was like, I think she was like this too, that we were like, yeah, we've done the silent movie and now we're
Yeah,
done. And I think there's like a part of me that's just like, I'd do it again.
yeah,
Like I really loved making it. And like I love the challenge of it, and I felt like I became a better filmmaker and writer because of it. I think Caitlin felt the same, where I think we both felt we were like, oh yeah, like yeah, I could totally go for another. I'm not saying a sequel, but like
yeah,
another one of these, um, because it was so fun and everything. So yeah, I think in terms of like what's next, like I'm never really looking to be like what's like the weirdest thing I can do. It's just kind of like dinosaurs is like a big one. Like I gotta do dinosaurs at some point, but like beyond that, it's really hopefully just making stuff that like lasts a little
yeah,
bit and and that doesn't stop me from making another thing. So
yeah.
that's
Well,
always like my barometer.
yeah. You're like, don't make a giant movie that loses to $100 million and I'll be fine. All right, I can
Yeah.
do that. Like, you
Yeah,
know,
and I really like I'd like to work in the bigger space, but I'm also like if people want to give me this much money to do like weird silent alien movies, like I'm like great.
yeah.
Like this
Well, yeah, because
all
like, yeah, like if Jurassic Park called, you're like, oh, listen, but like, I don't want that to be the reason I don't have a career anymore. Like, let me make my
yeah.
dinosaur
I
movie.
called them, but they didn't pick
Yeah.
up.
You're like, I'm cheaper. I swear, I'll do it for free. And they didn't return my call. Listen,
But yeah, but yeah, and they probably wouldn't want to do what I would want to do anyway. But I think
I want to.
um yeah, like that's the thing. Like I think just wanting to be, and that was honestly one of the really nice things about doing it for um Hulu, where like, we had this conversation with the studio. Like it would be a different movie if it came out in theaters because there would be different parameters and different goals and
Yeah,
different things like that. And so the fact that it was always like I chose streaming over theatrical myself when we were setting it up, and it was just kind of like, hey, this is kind of weird and it would be nice to keep it kind of weird and not really worry about, and like for me, like the golden age of streaming was like the OA and Sense8 and like these like giant swings that no one else would ever make until there's like that moment in time where streaming was just like, let's just try everything. And I don't think we're as odd as those things, but like that was for me what was so exciting about streaming is like this is weird and this would test terribly, but like this is so for me.
Yeah.
Um, as opposed to again, like when you go theatrical,
Yeah.
you have to make all this money back, and your marketing has to be a certain way, and then your test scores have to be a certain way, and the freedom that we had on Hulu, where it could kind of just become like a fun word of mouth discovery for
Yeah.
people, and we felt it that couple first weeks was really exciting because it wasn't for everybody, and but there are people that it was for, it really bullseyed them, and that felt really
Totally.
great and like a real vindication of I think what streaming can offer.
Yeah. And I don't
Um,
want to hear from people who didn't like it. This is too,
Oh,
this, this should have been
everyone's
everyone.
been really, everyone for the most part has
I
been
know.
really cool. I thought it was going to be way more divisive than it turned out to be.
No,
Like every
people.
now and again, I'll get like the mean tweet, and I
Yeah,
can just tell they were on their phone the whole time.
exactly. No, I was headed home from California for a thing I was at, and the embargo lifted, and I was like, oh, I was actually sending the email of like, oh, let's make sure I can talk to Kit. Oh, they're on strike. That's like, that's even
I
rude.
know it was such a bummer. It
I
was
sent
so
their
hard
congrats. That was all I
because
did.
when the because I don't read reviews,
Yeah,
but
you shouldn't.
people just consistently tell me
Yeah,
what they are. Um, but when the embargo dropped, Caitlin was so excited and then sad because it was like there's so many I like because we share an agent, and like the embargo dropped and there's so many like best performance of her career
yep.
kind of things, which I was like, that's not true. Like she's so spectacular in so many things. But I was like, oh, like it sucked because she couldn't really get to do like the well-earned victory lap of I took a chance on this crazy movie, and then she gave such a cool and unique performance. And then she's just like silent in the corner, and she was really upset about it. Not because of the strike, because she was very pro SAG. But I think just like she's really proud of the movie, and we
Yeah.
really we're great partners together. And so it was really fun this last weekend getting to finally um party with her about it, and hopefully we'll have to do a few things together coming up.
Well deserved. I can't wait to see
She's the
what both
best.
of you do next. Two of my favorite people in the business. So
Hopefully stuff together. Yeah, we're
I
trying.
want that. Make it happen.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing
Thank you
this.
so much, man.
Oh yeah, can't wait till you're too big to do this next time. That's my goal.
Never.
Nah,
Never.
fingers crossed though. I won't be offended. I'll be proud. But if not, feel free to keep slumming it. Congrats again.
I'm really happy at slumming it, man. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, well, you know where to come. Thank you so much, man. Always a pleasure.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much, man. Thanks for all your support.
Oh yeah, anytime.